Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. My name is Noah, and I'm here to share a story about how someone you trust with your heart can change in an instant, leaving you to decide whether to shatter under the betrayal or take back control with a single, calculated move. 2 weeks before my wedding, my fiancée ended our engagement with a cold text message. I responded with 3 simple words, "If you say so." Then I got to work to understand what I did and why. We need to start from the beginning because the truth lies in the details, and the details will keep you hooked until the end. A few years ago, I was a financial consultant at a credit union in Portland, working in the small business division. My job was to guide entrepreneurs through loans, credit strategies, and financial planning, often hosting workshops and networking events to connect with clients. That's where I met Emma. It was at one of these events, a bustling evening of ambitious dreamers and practical advice. I was at my booth explaining loan options when Emma walked in. She was striking, confident, with a sharp curiosity in her eyes. She approached my table with a question about scaling her startup, a boutique graphic design firm. Her question was specific, well thought out, and I gave her a clear, detailed answer. But what stood out was how effortlessly we clicked. Our conversation stretched beyond her question, weaving through small talk and shared interests. It felt natural, almost inevitable. When the event ended, I handed her my card. "If you run into any challenges or need more advice, just reach out," I said. She smiled, tucked the card into her pocket, and said, "I will." Over the next few weeks, she did. At first, her texts were strictly about her business, cash flow concerns, loan terms, credit repair. I'd respond with tailored advice, and she'd ask smart follow-ups. But soon, our exchanges grew personal. A question about interest rates turned into a chat about our favorite coffee spots in Portland. A quick call about budgeting led to an hour-long conversation about life goals. Before long, we were texting daily, calling occasionally, and meeting up outside of work. Coffee dates became dinners, and dinners became weekends together. I thought I'd found something real, something lasting. But as I'd learned, beginnings can dazzle you while hiding cracks beneath the surface. Emma and I had been dating for several months when I started noticing the weight she carried. Her business was struggling more than she'd let on at first. Cash flow was inconsistent, and she was juggling overdue invoices alongside personal debts, mostly student loans from her design degree. She was upfront about it, which I respected. "It's been rough," she admitted one evening, her voice soft but steady. "I'm trying to keep it together, but it's a lot." I didn't judge her. I know how debt can snowball, especially when you're chasing a dream. As a financial consultant, I saw it all the time. And since we were serious, I figured her problems were ours to tackle together. I offered to help. We sat down and mapped out her finances, business expenses, personal bills, loan payments. I showed her how to prioritize, cut costs, and negotiate with creditors. She listened, took notes, and followed through. Slowly, her business stabilized, and her credit score crept upward. She thanked me constantly, saying she couldn't have done it without me. It felt good to be her partner, not just in love, but in life. About a year into our relationship, I knew she was the one. I proposed on a quiet hike in the Columbia River Gorge, and she said yes with tears in her eyes. We moved in together, started planning our wedding, and dreamed about our future. Everything seemed to align, or so I thought. One night, over dinner, Emma brought up a new idea, buying a small office space for her business. Renting was eating into her profits, and owning a property would give her stability and equity. It was a bold move, but I admired her ambition. "It could be a game changer," she said, her eyes bright with possibility. I agreed. It made sense. But there was a catch. Despite her progress, her credit still wasn't strong enough for a commercial mortgage. She needed a cosigner, and she asked if I'd step in. "Your credit's perfect," she said. "It'll seal the deal, and I'll refinance it in my name once the business is solid." I hesitated. Cosigning is a big risk. I'd seen clients burn by it. But we were engaged, building a life together. If I couldn't support her now, what kind of husband would I be? After some thought, I said yes. I believed in her. I believed in us. What I didn't know then was that Emma had already borrowed money from me months earlier, a $12,000 personal loan for business expenses and a few bills. She'd promised to repay it by a specific month, and I trusted her, no contract needed. We were partners, after all. But that month came and went, and she never mentioned it. I noticed but stayed quiet. Wedding planning was in full swing. Venue booked, invitations sent, families buzzing with excitement. I didn't want to rock the boat over money. I thought, we'll sort it out after the wedding. Little did I know, that unpaid loan was just the first thread unraveling in a much larger tapestry of deception. As the wedding date loomed closer, I began to sense a shift in Emma. The woman who once filled our evenings with laughter and shared dreams started to pull away. Our usual routines, cooking dinner together, watching a show, or even just talking about our day, faded. She was always too tired or swamped with work. At first, I chalked it up to pre-wedding stress. Planning a wedding in Portland, with its endless vendor options and family expectations, could overwhelm anyone. I didn't want to add to her burden, so I let it slide, giving her space. But deep down, the quiet unease began to grow, like a whisper I couldn't quite ignore. About 3 weeks before the wedding, Emma's distance became undeniable. She'd leave early for work, stay late, and come home with barely a word. Texts went unanswered for hours, and when she did reply, they were short, almost curt. I tried to bring it up one evening, gently asking if something was wrong. "I'm just stressed, Noah," she snapped, her eyes avoiding mine. "Can you just give me a break?" Her tone stung, but I nodded and backed off. I told myself it was temporary, that we'd get through this once the wedding chaos settled. But the truth was, I was starting to feel like a stranger in my own home. Then came a Tuesday that changed everything. I was at the credit union, reviewing a client's loan application, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Emma. I opened it, expecting a quick update or maybe a soft apology for her mood. Instead, the words hit like a punch. "Wedding's off. My lawyer will contact you." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. I read it again, then a third time, hoping I'd misread it. My hand shook as I called her, but it went straight to voicemail. Minutes later, another text. "Only talk to me through my lawyer." The coldness of it was surgical, like she'd planned every word to cut deep. I sat there, the hum of the office fading into a dull roar, and typed back, "If you say so." 3 words, calm and deliberate, masking the storm inside me. When I got home that evening, the apartment was eerily quiet. Emma was gone. Her clothes, her laptop, her favorite coffee mug, everything she owned had vanished. The space we'd built together felt hollow, like a stage cleared after a play. I stood in the doorway, the weight of her absence pressing against my chest. It hurt, a raw, aching kind of pain, but as I walked through the empty rooms, something else stirred, a clarity, a resolve. Emma had made her move, but I wasn't going to let her control the board. That night, I sat down with my laptop and logged into the mortgage portal for the commercial property we'd applied for. I'd co-signed to help her secure the loan, believing it was a step toward our shared future. But now, with her gone, I checked the status. The application was still pending. The deal hadn't closed. A quiet power surged through me. Without my signature, that mortgage wouldn't go through. I clicked through the portal and withdrew my cosign, a single action that severed her plan's lifeline. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself she'd tried to take. As I scrolled through our old texts, another memory surfaced, the $12,000 loan I'd given her months ago. She'd promised to repay it by a specific month, a promise captured in a text I still had. That month had passed, and she'd never mentioned it. At the time, I let it go, caught up in wedding plans and trust. But now, with her betrayal laid bare, I saw it for what it was, a debt, not a favor. I wasn't her partner anymore, and I didn't know her silence. The next morning, I called my lawyer, David, and laid out everything: the loan, the text, the broken engagement, the mortgage. He listened, then said, "We've got a case. Let's move." We drafted a small claims lawsuit for the unpaid loan, attaching her text as evidence. By noon, the paperwork was filed, and the gears of justice began to turn. Within 48 hours, the fallout hit. Emma's lawyer sent an email, then a voicemail, requesting a meeting to discuss the withdrawal and the suit. I didn't respond. The urgency in their tone told me my moves had landed harder than Emma expected. David dug deeper and found out she'd already signed a lease for the office space, banking on a mortgage going through. She'd also hired a contractor for renovations, assuming my cosign was a done deal. My zero withdrawal didn't just tank the loan. It left her exposed, legally and financially. The lawsuit, meanwhile, loomed over her shaky credit like a storm cloud. Emma's carefully laid plans were unraveling, and I hadn't even said a word. Then, Emma reached out directly. No lawyer, just a text. Noah, can we talk? I didn't mean for this to happen. Please undo the withdrawal. I read it, my jaw tightening. She followed up hours later with a longer message, claiming she'd been overwhelmed and panicked under pressure. She begged for a chance to fix things. I stared at the words, her sudden softness clashing with the coldness of her breakup text. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think there was an explanation that could make this right. But another part, the part that had seen her vanish without a trace, knew better. I didn't reply. I let her words hang in the air, unanswered. The days after Emma's texts were a test of my resolve. I had withdrawn my cosign from her mortgage and filed a small claims lawsuit for the $12,000 she owed me. And now her carefully constructed world was crumbling. Her messages kept coming, each one more desperate than the last. Noah, I'm sorry. I messed up. Can we just talk? Read one. Another, sent late at night, said, I didn't mean to hurt you. I was scared and made a mistake. Her words tugged at old feelings, stirring memories of the woman I'd loved, the one who'd laughed with me on rainy Portland evenings, who dreamed big and trusted me with her fears. But those memories clashed with the reality of her betrayal, the cold text that ended our engagement, and the apartment she'd left empty. I read her messages, but I didn't respond. Silence, I was learning, could be louder than words. Emma's tone shifted by the end of the week. The apologies gave way to frustration. You're being unfair, she wrote. This lawsuit and pulling the mortgage, it's spiteful. You know how much this means to me. She accused me of trying to ruin her, of turning our personal fallout into a vendetta. Her final message that day was sharp. If this is how you want it, we'll settle it in court. I stared at her words, a mix of anger and calm settling in. She'd miscalculated, assuming I'd cave to her pleas or back off under her accusations. But I was done playing her game. If court was where this was headed, I was ready. My lawyer, David, prepped me for the small claims hearing. It's straightforward, he said. Her text promising repayment is clear evidence. She can't dispute it. We reviewed the timeline, the loan, her promise, the missed repayment, and her sudden exit. David also uncovered more about the mortgage deal. Emma had signed a lease and a contractor agreement, both contingent on the loan closing. Without my cosign, the lender had rejected her application, leaving her liable for the lease and facing penalties for backing out of the contractor deal. The lawsuit, though separate, added pressure. Her credit was already fragile, and a court judgment would make it worse. She's in a corner, David said. Your moves were clean and legal. She has no leverage. As the court date approached, Emma's lawyer tried again to negotiate. A voicemail offered to settle the loan if I'd reinstate my cosign. I didn't bite. The offer was a desperate attempt to salvage her business plan, but it ignored the trust she'd shattered. I wasn't about to tie my name to her debt again, not after she'd shown her true colors. David advised me to hold firm. Let the court handle it, he said. You got the upper hand. The hearing was scheduled for a rainy Thursday morning in a small Portland courtroom. I arrived early, dressed in a suit, my nerves steady but tight. Emma was already there, sitting across the room with her lawyer. She looked different, tired, her usual confidence dimmed. Our eyes met briefly, and she looked away. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, called the case. I presented my side calmly. The loan, the text where she promised repayment by a specific month, and her failure to pay. David submitted the text thread as evidence, along with bank records showing the transfer. Emma's lawyer argued she'd intended to pay, but faced unforeseen financial hardship. He claimed the breakup complicated things, framing it as a personal dispute rather than a clear debt. The judge wasn't swayed. The text is a clear agreement, she said. peering at Emma. "Do you dispute sending this message or receiving the funds?" Emma shook her head, her voice barely audible. "No, Your Honor." The ruling came quickly. Emma was ordered to repay the $12,000, plus court fees, through a payment plan since she couldn't pay up front. I felt no triumph, just a quiet relief. The law had done its job, and I'd held my ground. But the real blow to Emma came outside the courtroom. Without the mortgage, her business expansion collapsed. The office space she'd leased became a financial anchor. She couldn't afford the rent without the loan, and breaking the lease triggered penalties. The contractor, already hired, threatened legal action for unpaid work. Her business, once on the cusp of growth, was now hemorrhaging money. I didn't know the full extent of it then, but David later heard through legal circles that her credit score had taken a hit, making future loans nearly impossible. My withdrawal and the lawsuit hadn't just stopped her plan, they'd exposed her overreach. A week after the hearing, Emma texted again. This time, there was no anger, just a raw vulnerability. "I'm losing everything, Noah," she wrote. "The business is failing. I didn't think it would come to this. I miss you." The words hit harder than I expected. Part of me wondered if she was genuine, if the pressure had broken her facade. But another part saw the pattern, her reaching out only when she needed something, whether it was money, a cosign, or now, forgiveness. I sat with the message for hours, my thumb hovering over the reply button. In the end, I didn't respond. Some doors, once closed, need to stay that way. The weeks following the court ruling were a strange limbo for me. Emma's text, "I'm losing everything, Noah. The business is failing. I miss you," lingered in my mind like an echo I couldn't shake. It wasn't just her words, it was the weight behind them, the hint of regret that made me question everything. Had she truly panicked and made a mistake, as she claimed? Or was this another calculated move, a last-ditch effort to pull me back into her orbit? I'd won the lawsuit, reclaimed my financial freedom by withdrawing my cosign, and watched her business plans collapse under the weight of her own choices. Yet, sitting alone in our once-shared Portland apartment, I couldn't help but wonder, was there more to her story, or was this the final act of a performance I'd been too blind to see? Emma's messages didn't stop. A few days after her first plea, another came. "I know I hurt you, but I'm drowning. Can we meet? Just to talk." Then another, softer. "I never wanted it to end like this. I still think about us." Each text chipped away at the wall I'd built, stirring memories of better days. Her laugh, the way she'd sketched designs on napkins during coffee dates, the nights we'd planned a future that felt so certain. But those memories were tainted now, shadowed by her cold breakup text and the empty apartment she'd left behind. I didn't reply, but I didn't block her either. I wasn't sure why. Maybe part of me wanted to see how far she'd go, or maybe I was still grappling with the pain of losing what I thought we had. Meanwhile, I dug deeper into the fallout of her failed business venture. Through David, my lawyer, and a few industry contacts, I pieced together the extent of Emma's predicament. The office space she'd leased was a financial albatross, $4,000 a month she couldn't pay, with a year-long contract she couldn't break without hefty penalties. The contractor she'd hired for renovations had filed a lien against her business for unpaid work, and her credit, already battered, was now in ruins. Her graphic design firm, once a promising startup, was hemorrhaging clients as word spread about her financial troubles. In Portland's tight-knit creative scene, reputation mattered, and hers was crumbling. It was hard to watch, even from a distance. I'd loved her once, believed in her dream, but I also knew she'd brought this on herself, leveraging my trust without a backward glance. Then came a new development. David called me one afternoon with news. Emma's lawyer reached out again, he said. They're offering to pay the $12,000 in full, no payment plan, if you agree to a non-disclosure agreement about the lawsuit and the mortgage withdrawal. I frowned, processing the offer. It was a bold move. Paying the loan outright was no small feat given her financial state. The NDA suggested she was trying to protect what little was left of her reputation, maybe to salvage future business deals. "What's your take?" I asked. David paused. "She's desperate to bury this. Paying you off is cheaper than letting the lawsuit's public record tank her further." But an NDA means you can't talk about what she did. Not the loan, not the cosign, nothing. I told him I'd think it over. The money was mine by right, but the NDA felt like a gag order, a way for Emma to erase her accountability. I wasn't sure I wanted to give her that. That evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Emma. Her voice was shaky, nothing like the confident tone I'd once known. "Noah, please don't hang up," she said. "I know I don't deserve this, but I need to explain." I stayed silent, letting her talk. She said she'd been under crushing pressure, debts piling up, clients bailing, her business teetering. She claimed ending the engagement was a mistake born of fear, that she thought cutting ties would protect me from her financial mess. "I didn't want to drag you down with me," she said, her voice breaking. "But I see now how wrong I was. I'm so sorry." She paused, then added, "I'm trying to fix things. The settlement offer, it's all I have left to make this right." I listened, my grip tightening on the phone. Her story was compelling, her emotion raw, but something felt rehearsed, like a script she'd practiced. "Why didn't you talk to me?" I finally asked. "Why a text? Why a lawyer?" She hesitated, then said, "I panicked. I wasn't thinking straight." It was an answer, but not a satisfying one. I told her I needed time and ended the call. Her words swirled in my head, a mix of sincerity and manipulation I couldn't untangle. Was she truly remorseful, or was this a play to neutralize the damage I'd done to her plans? I met with David the next day to discuss the settlement. "If you take the money and sign the NDA, it's over," he said. "You get paid, but she controls the narrative. If you refuse, the lawsuit's public record stands, and she'll have to deal with the consequences." I weighed the options. Accepting the offer would close the chapter cleanly, but it meant letting Emma rewrite history. Refusing it kept the truth alive, a reminder of her betrayal. I was torn, not just by logic, but by the lingering question of who Emma really was. Had I ever known her, or had our entire relationship been a means to an end? As I wrestled with the decision, another text from Emma arrived. "I'm not the person you think I am. Give me a chance to prove it." Attached was a photo, a sketch of the Columbia River Gorge, where I'd proposed. It was a gut punch, a reminder of the love I'd once felt. But it also felt like a calculated move, a hook to reel me back in. I didn't respond, but the photo stayed with me, a symbol of the choice I faced. Let go or hold her accountable, even if it meant staying in this fight longer than I wanted. The sketch of the Columbia River Gorge that Emma sent me lingered like a ghost. It was a deliberate move, a reminder of the day I proposed, when everything felt possible. But as I sat in my Portland apartment, staring at her latest text, "I'm not the person you think I am. Give me a chance to prove it," I felt the weight of the choice before me. Her settlement offer, $12,000 in exchange for an NDA, was on the table. Accepting it would end this saga, repay the loan, and let me walk away. Refusing it would keep the lawsuit's public record alive, a permanent mark on her reputation. My heart wanted closure, but my gut screamed that Emma's remorse was just another play. The truth, I realized, wasn't just in her words. It was in her actions, and I needed to see this through to the end. I met with David, my lawyer, to finalize my decision. "The NDA protects her more than you," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You've already won the lawsuit. The money's yours, whether she pays now or through the court's plan. Signing means you're giving up the right to tell your story." I nodded, thinking of the Portland creative scene, where Emma's reputation was already fraying. The lawsuit's public record, combined with her failed business deals, was a scarlet letter she couldn't erase. Refusing the NDA would keep that pressure on, forcing her to face the consequences of betraying my trust. "I'm not signing," I said. "Let the record stand." David smirked. "Good call. She's not getting a clean slate." Emma's reaction was swift. 2 days later, she texted again, her tone a mix of desperation and defiance. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm trying to fix things, but you're punishing me." Then a voicemail. "Noah, I know I messed up, but I'm begging you. My business is gone. I can't start over if you keep this lawsuit public. Please." Her voice cracked, and for a moment, I felt a pang of pity. But pity wasn't truth. Her pattern: borrowing money, dodging repayment, using my cosign, then ghosting me with a lawyer's threat, told a story her tears couldn't rewrite. I didn't respond. I was done being her safety net. The fallout for Emma was brutal. David's contacts confirmed what I'd suspected. Her graphic design firm was finished. Clients had fled, unwilling to work with someone whose financial troubles were now public. The office lease she'd signed became a $48,000 liability she couldn't pay, and the contractor's lien pushed her deeper into debt. Her credit, already damaged, was now radioactive. No bank in Portland would touch her. Whispers in the creative community painted her as unreliable, a cautionary tale. I didn't relish her downfall, but I couldn't ignore the justice in it. She'd gambled on my trust, assuming I'd stay silent when she walked away. She'd lost. Months passed, and I started rebuilding. I moved to a new apartment, one without memories of Emma. Work at the credit union kept me grounded, and I threw myself into helping clients, finding purpose in their success. Friends rallied around me, and slowly the ache of betrayal faded. Then, one rainy afternoon, my phone buzzed with a new message from Emma. It was long, unguarded, unlike anything she'd sent before. "I've lost everything," she wrote. "The business, my reputation, my dreams. I know I did this to myself. I used you, and I'll never forgive myself for it. I loved you, Noah, but I let fear and greed take over. I'm starting over, somewhere new. I just needed you to know I'm sorry. No plea, no request, just an apology, raw and final." I read it, my chest tight. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think she'd learned something in the wreckage. But another part saw the truth. Her apology came only after she'd exhausted every other option. I didn't reply. I deleted the message and let her fade into the past. Some wounds heal by moving forward, not by looking back. Reflecting on it all, I learned lessons I'll carry forever. First, love doesn't blind you to red flags. It demands you see them clearly. Emma's financial troubles, her unpaid loan, her push for my cosign. They were warnings I ignored because I trusted her heart. Second, always get in writing. That single text where she promised to repay saved me in court. Verbal promises dissolve. Evidence endures. Finally, stay steady when you're hurt. I felt the pain of her betrayal, but I didn't lash out. I moved with purpose, revoking the cosign, filing the lawsuit, and that precision turned her plan against her. I still wonder, was Emma's love ever real, or was I just a means to her end? The breakup, so abrupt and legalistic, felt like a strategy, not a panic. She thought she could outmaneuver me, but she didn't count on my resolve. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone listening, it's this: trust is precious, but it's not a blank check. Protect yourself, not out of cynicism, but out of respect for what you're worth.